I don't have that ego when it comes to networking to where like being able to be accessible as well on my side, but also being able to reach out
Sure.
to people that I want to be introduced to or people that I want to meet or circles that I want to be in. That ego for me is not there because I know that, if you really want to be in touch with folks that are extremely busy or in the areas or levels that you want to be, of course they're going to be busy
Yeah.
at the same time. So then just being mindful of your space, but also be a prime advocate and be very intentional and direct, and don't be afraid to follow up, connect, be introduced, or have someone introduce you at the same time. Indie is the perfect place to do that.
What's good, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Conversation Piece, your place to discover the untold stories of Indianapolis and all of its beautiful people. My name is Patrick Armstrong. I am your host, and I am super excited to be back for another installment in May, the year of Community 2025. We've had a lot of really incredible conversations this month. We've had a lot of really incredible people on the show, and we've had a lot of really incredible events happening. So if you want to catch up with any or all of those things, make sure you go to conversationpiecePod.com. And if you're liking what you're hearing, best way you can support the show is by telling a friend. Share it with your friend, and then make sure they share it with 2 friends, and let's just keep running those numbers up. Speaking of running the numbers up, I'm really excited about this conversation I am getting into today. My guest today works too much and too hard all of the time, and that's one of the reasons he has made such an outsized impact in such a short time here in Indianapolis. In addition to his role serving folks all over the country at LISC, which is the Local Initiative Support Corporation, he sits on the board of several organizations throughout the city, including the Center of Interfaith Corporation, the Immigrant Welcome Center, the Philippines Community Center, and the Asian Pacific Islander American Public Affairs Indiana chapter. I'd be remiss as well to not mention that he has been recognized for his work, as he was named one of IBJ's 20 in their 20s in 2023, and last year in 2024 was a finalist for the Nonprofit Employee of the Year from the United Way of Central Indiana. Needless to say, this dude does a lot, and I can see he's trying to read what I've written here, so we're going to get into it now. But before we do that, I just have to say he is an excellent human being, and I'm very glad to know him. So it's been a long time getting to this point to have this conversation. So without further ado, it is my great privilege and joy to welcome my friend Ephraim Palmeiro to the show.
Thanks for having me, Pat.
100%. I appreciate you being here. All right. Let me take a sip of water. First off, I just want to say congratulations. You've been doing a lot of things, and you've been all over the place, and I just want to give you your flowers. I like to write the intros for folks, and yours was difficult to write because you've been involved in so many different things. So it was hard to cover them all. And I wanted to make sure we hit some highlights because I think you are, in my estimation, a humble person, and you deserve your flowers. And I think whenever we try to give you your flowers in meetings off mic, you try and reject them. So I'm getting it on mic right now. You are an amazing person, and I appreciate all the work that
Thank
you
you
do.
so much.
A lot of the work that you do is rooted in civic pride, civic engagement, like at that civic level. I was wondering, where does that sense of civic pride and the drive to engage in that work, where does that come from?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me on the show.
For sure.
As well. I mean, everything is reiterated likewise towards you as well. So,
Thank you.
that those flowers are also given from me to you at the same time. But, going into where does that drive come from? So just sharing a little bit about myself is I'm originally from the Philippines. I was born in Manila, but my parents were missionary doctors. So because of that, I ended up spending my childhood mostly in West Africa. I lived in Liberia and the Gambia, which is right next to Senegal, for a couple of years. But that was essentially my childhood for a bit, and also played into my identity as well to serve. Like just being able to see My parents do the work, working in hospitals over there, seeing the impact that they bring. Even though I was a little bit younger and all that, obviously that resonated with me to a point to where even when we immigrated here, stateside as well, that really inspired me. Whether if I knew it at that point or not, that just being engaged in our community, being able to uplift our community, that was like the number one thing on that end. But yeah, I mean that also comes with being a little bit of having a international background,
Sure.
like I mentioned as well, is even within the United States, we state hopped. We live in different states. So I lived, the first state. It's funny that I always share this story. Is like I went from West Africa and then immigrated all the way to the U.S., but my first state was in Alaska. So I went all the way from one extreme side of climate to the complete opposite. But that really resonates to what my entire journey has encompassed from.
For sure. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's like really interesting how our identities get shaped by our environments. You grew up in or born in Manila and then grew up and spent a majority of your growing up time in different areas of West Africa. How much did your parents and how much did you engage in Filipino culture in addition to being raised as a global citizen?
Right. No, I think that's an excellent question because it's usually if you don't have that background, it's almost hard to resonate with 100%. But I would say what kept my identity at its core was honestly my family and my parents. My parents always made it an effort to speak Tagalog at our household, and that resonated throughout wherever we go, wherever we move. That sort of our culture is kept within our home. But then we obviously with my global upbringing and their nature of work as well is we always get that inspiration and we get other cultures as well within our household at the same time. So it just comes with just being adaptable and adding in a bunch of other things, whether if it's small language words or expressions or things of that nature, or even food. That's something that we always kept.
For sure. Did you think it was at the time, did it feel difficult or or destabilizing to move around as your parents were moving for their job? Or was it just we're going to the next place?
Yeah. Well, I think at first, the difficulty came with when we moved probably stateside and explaining my journey, especially when people ask, where are you from?
Sure.
And I'm just all boy, all right, story time. Because I can't really say oh, I'm just born and raised here. And I was no, born here, raised here, moved here, immigrated somewhere else. So I think that the difficulty came more with if there was communities or areas where they don't have that much of an exposure to international travel or global upbringing, then it takes a little while to clarify or just reemphasize that journey. But after that, it just becomes pretty straightforward.
For sure. I think that it's so interesting to think about as an adoptee growing up outside of my country of origin, but also completely removed from the community of origin, how that led to a rejection of identity. But thinking about how your journey, you were able to kind of still retain the sense because your parents kept it in the household, but it also was infused and bolstered by the context of other places and other cultures and communities.
Yes.
So another thing that we've thought, I believe this episode is coming out in May. Who knows? But it's coming out tangentially to then, which is Asian History or Heritage Month. And one of the conversations we've been having about, or one of the themes in the conversations we've been having this month has been the stereotype of doctor, lawyer, engineer as a career path for specifically Asian American kids. I think when you think of doctor too, in this context, I'm thinking of somebody who goes into the hospital in one place and stays in that hospital, or maybe is in the same area or city or state. Your parents were literally global doctors, international doctors. They were all over the place. So it has a different maybe idea of what it means to be a doctor. But was that something that you don't do medical or doctoral work at the moment? Was that something that was was that a career path you were going down and that your parents wanted you to pursue, or how did you end up maybe not pursuing that and ended up where you're at now?
Well, Pat, have you met Filipinos? I think one thing was it's hilarious, right? But it also came from like a sense of like what they have knowledge with or what they're
Sure.
comfortable with. Because it's just like, well, yes, my parents were missionary doctors, and yes, they did heavily like advocated, and pushed me on that pathway too. It was funny because I think starting off in college as well, I was nursing pre-med, which was like probably one of the worst combos you could ever do on those ends. And then I in a way, it was a good thing too, because that made me realize, this pathway is not for me.
Sure.
But I'm glad I was able to shift and was able to find that self-awareness early on and realize that, okay, I could actually shift, but provide at least a sense of stability and confidence to my parents that I'm going to get it done and I'm still going to be able to essentially bring value on those ends. And I think now, for them, that's the case as well. But I mean, definitely the culture there is definitely very push that as well. But that also comes from a sense of survivability as well, because it's like, I understand why those career fields are heavily advocated for and pushed for, because those are similar positions, whether if it's in their country of origin to here in the United States. Like, those things are still invaluable positions in society. So wherever you go, there's still going to be a good place or a good spot for them. So I understand that need, but now it's like, I'm glad that they also were aware later on through just seeing me being confident in myself and in my space. That's when they realized that, he's good, right? Because because we raised him well, but at the same time, he has that self-awareness to be able to just have his own pathway.
For sure. Was there a specific moment when you realized this like med path is not for me? Or was it just a culmination of like, I'm in nursing and pre-med and that is way too much and I'm done?
Yeah, that was a mixture of both. It was like, it was way too much. Wasn't a big science guy. Wasn't into the bios and all of that. But I think it does take a certain sense of awareness, really in that space, because it was like, it wasn't for me, but the art of being able to uplift others and just being able to help communities as well. Those are tangible skills, or those big things that are very easily transferable.
For sure. The self-awareness piece is key. And I think also it's like, when we think of what it means to be in service to our community, I think it's like we get I think doctor is something that comes to our mind. Lawyer comes to the mind. Engineer probably does now more, but I think back in the day, maybe not. But like, I don't know. Like, I think service has in the last couple decades really taken on new definition of what it means to do that. And part of that is through like, in the political sphere, in the civic sphere, it's more than just we sit here and like make laws or whatever it is. Like there's more to it. But at the end of the day, it's rooted in the idea of like service to our community. So when you decide this is not for me, I got this self-awareness that it's not. I want to still remain a steward and a servant to my community. I want to be involved in this work at a professional level.
Right.
What does that pivot look like? What does it look like to try and decide this is now the area I'm going to pursue?
No, I think this is great because you're talking about, servicing the community, right? And now there are many ways to do it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I say like, well, I work at a financial institution, right?
Sure.
But I'm not saying I'm like a finance bro or anything like that. But it's like, it's still mission driven. It's still very social impact. I still get to touch a lot of different things that are happening to further develop like community development or economic development, not just within the city, but nationwide as well. But I think they're like you said, continuing on our conversation, there are many avenues towards it, right? There is the civil service side of things. There is the public service side of things. But then even in the private and corporate world, you have philanthropy, right? You have corporate social responsibility, right? You have social impact. You have those mission-based financial institutions like where I work at right now, where those things are able to serve as that connecting point, the convening point to where we can really provide not just those conversations, but also those technical assistance and those resources that we're able to provide communities and small businesses and organizations alike to support that work. So there are many avenues now to incorporate a service-based or community-based mindset. And I'm just one of those guys that say like, hey, like, you know, it's very eventful. It's a great thing to be a part of. And, you know, you're still able to do well in your career at the same time.
Well, I asked that because you have a master's in community engagement.
Community and international development.
Development. Yeah. So, like when I was in school, I would have never thought that would be something that you even go to school for. Like you could go and get a degree in something like that.
Yeah.
And so I guess, how do you get to there? Like, were you aware that this is something I could pursue in this way? Like get an education in community focused work and then go actually pursue that professionally. Like, is that something that was a path that was already laid out for you that you knew of?
Yeah, I think I knew that a pathway was there. It's just, it wasn't as clear at the very beginning of my journey, just to be real.
Yeah, no, totally.
With you on that end. But I think that came with like being able to volunteer, being able to do internships. I worked for a couple of months a few years ago at a humanitarian agency in Yemen, in the Middle East. And that was probably one of my first real experiences in international development work. And that also really exposed me to this particular line of work, to where when I decided to go back to school, I decided to do, you know, my master's in community international development, but it was more focused on being able to like do all the things that you were saying, is being able to, one, be competitive. The other is being able to show that you have those foundational skills. But that was something that I was actually interested, because of my global upbringing, is to go back to the international development space, which was like, okay, I'll work with USAID, or I'll work in the State Department. I'll do the Peace Corps and things of that. But it's funny that you mention it, because I couldn't do that in 2021 because that was still during COVID times. Yeah. So then when I was applying, I was midway through my Peace Corps application, and then they gave us the notice to be like, hey, like everything is like paused momentarily. We'll come back soon. It didn't come back soon. To where like, you know, we just can't give you a definitive timeline on what that looked like. So then for me, I was like, okay, well, the next big thing was AmeriCorps.
Sure.
And then AmeriCorps was that federal volunteer service program that was still active during COVID, because it's more domestic. I would say that's more of the domestic side of what the Peace Corps does. Is it stays national, it stays within the continental U.S., and you're still able to get practical, you know, year of service of practical experience and what interests you're looking for.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the idea, like you got a really good, like, firsthand viewpoint of what it looked like to develop community, to be in service community growing up with your parents, and the work that they did. You now find yourself doing that work, coming out of college now, trying to figure out, how do I get involved more and more in this work? And like you said, you wanted to, initially when you were in Yemen, it's like, okay, I want to get back in the international space. You eventually find yourself, though, stateside, doing more a little bit local community development. I'm interested in if you could kind of like share the difference that you saw from pre-2020, when we went through before a pandemic, or this global pandemic, and how we were developing community at both local and international level, to now being heavily involved in it, and how that maybe shifted or changed because of said pandemic.
Right.
I realized professionally you were not involved in it prior to 2020 because you were just growing up.
Yeah.
But now it's like, but you do have a unique vantage point because you grew up around it and surrounded by it.
Right. Yeah. No, I think these are all good points, because, you know, I would say, you know, pre-pandemic, you know, I was still a student.
Sure.
Right. I was still a senior in undergrad, trying to figure out, what's next for me
Right.
on that end. But then even during that senior year, right, 2020, 2021, right, you saw a bunch of social movements.
Sure.
You saw a bunch of things that happened on a global scale, and then added to that, the pandemic, and sort of just disrupt so many things in our society, to where like what it means to actually help develop community, help develop society, is now being looked at in a way to where it's not just what was traditionally or standard before, but it's more agile, it's more innovative. There are many things that came out of the pandemic as well that now become more standard in our society, just like, hybrid, right? Just even like going virtual or just being in person, just those things. But then it just transitioned to like many disruptive things as well on that side.
Do you feel like it was a significant enough change that it forced the industry to have to like move differently? Because I feel like when I think about community development now,
Right.
When I heard those words before, I wouldn't think about it as like an industry, but there is like an industry behind what it looks like to develop a community beyond just like a real estate situation. You know? So did you feel like that required a fundamental shift in the how? Maybe not the why. Maybe the why stays the same, but the how has to change because of what happened from 2020 to 2022.
Right. I think it's also clear, and the why is included on that, because for a long time, who controlled the why?
Great point.
At the same time, but now it's like, so how do we do it?
Yeah.
At that same time, so that's what I meant by that space was like, hey, like we're addressing now, like post pandemic as well, is addressing the historic disparities of resources that come into communities, as well, and also being able to address just the movement of resources as well. Either they were shifted away, transitioned out, or moved somewhere else. And that's some of the things about what it means for community development for me personally, is addressing those things, addressing the access, like for where I work here at LISC as well, is addressing the access to capital, access to resources, access to technical assistance as well. Those are like some of those big picture things that we work on, that I work on personally as well on that end. But as you could tell, like now it's just more out in the open, to where, hey, like the people that were in the table, or the way that the why was communicated in that space, right now it's like, hey, like how intentional are we to make sure that there's specific support or specific ways to address all of these discrepancies at the same time?
Yeah, I appreciate you breaking it down, because I feel like what I'm getting is like the intentionality behind the why. And that makes it intrinsic to the how. Because if we don't understand why, or why it was happening before, if we have to make a shift because of things that are outside of our control, can we learn from previous whys to develop maybe a new why that hopefully is better and operates from a place of community rather than, because community development. Okay, so you are in school, you do the work in Yemen through the program, and then you come back to the States, and that's when you join the AmeriCorps.
Yes.
And then that is what brings you to Indy for the first time.
Yep.
Okay, so first on the Indy front, initial impressions when you got here, because again, you're coming from an international background, global experience, and Alaska.
Right.
So
yeah, well, I mean, at that time I was moving from Michigan, because that's where I went to school at Andrews University, which is in Southwest Michigan. But in regards to Indy as well, when I first moved here because of AmeriCorps, my year of service with the city, I had zero knowledge, pretty much. Well, not zero, to where like I'm a big basketball guy, big NBA guy. So I knew Reggie Miller was here. I knew like the Pacers were here, the Colts were here. So in the sports sense as well, I was familiar with the city as well. But outside of that, I wasn't as knowledgeable about it. Didn't know anything about it. I viewed it as like sort of like a refresh or just a clean slate for me, just to really start that pathway, but also in a way, I did not. It's not, because of that, my expectations wasn't at like a particular high point.
Sure.
So then for me, it was like, well, it was just a year of service. So then if I'm just here 2021, 2022, then if I got to go, then, I could go back and see what's going on. But obviously that's not the case since I'm here.
Yeah, exactly. So perfect segue, because I was going to ask you, like, I knew that when our initial conversations, like when we first met, you're like, I didn't really plan on staying here.
No.
Like it wasn't not the initial like plan, but I am still here. So I wanted to ask you, like, what is keeping you here? What did you find that's like, I'm going to be in Indy now?
Yeah, I think one thing that really got me really bought in to like all things Indy was just how welcoming everybody was from the very beginning. I would say like shout out to like one of my first mentors here and also my first boss, Malala Kennedy. She used to work in the city and now she works more on the healthcare side of things. But she was one of the first welcoming people that really welcomed me into this space and not just became like obviously a boss to me, but also just as an ally, as a champion, someone that speaks highly of the work that I've worked really hard to show from a small amount of time to where now I'm able to connect with a bunch of other folks here that are doing similar things, have similar aspirations. But one thing that got me really embedded into Indy as well was leadership programs at the same time. So after my year of service, and then I got my offer to work at LISC as well. I also joined Indy Hub's 1828 leadership project. And that was a leadership program that allowed me to connect with other like-minded, 20s and 30-somethings as well, from all industries across Indy, but they're all connected with the idea to support each other and connect and be engaged in our society as well. So going into year 2 of Indy for me was being able to be plugged into these groups, these circles, and I've gotten really great friends that I still connect with till this day.
For sure.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, like we talked about identity being a big part of your journey and like growing up, and it still plays a significant role now. When you first came here, like you're in your year of service and then you're starting to do leadership programs. Yeah. That's a way of it into community building or building community.
Right.
How were, I guess specifically in that first year, were you building community? Did you find community in any other way outside of like the professional space? Mm-hmm. Like how were you doing or approaching that then?
Right. I think probably during those first times moving into Indy I had that immigrant mindset. Because I knew that I was going into a space here in Indy that, I don't have any historical connections. Right. I don't have any legacy connections. I don't have any family or friends at that point in the very beginning.
Like you said, clean slate.
Yeah, super. Where it's just like zero, but then it's like, hey, but now you know where you are. Now you know where you're starting. Now, where do you want to go from there? And that was something that I was very intentional about on the networking space. And now Indy as well, I'll give flowers to everybody in the community as well, is that there are great spaces now from all of our communities, Black, Brown, Asian as well, to where we're able to start cultivating and now start building together intentionally, with all these spaces at that point. And I owe it to all those pioneers that are doing all that work as well, because at the end of the day, it's supposed to be more clear and more easy for whoever's next to really have that pathway as well. So they don't got to start off like on the struggle bus, like for what I did. I don't want like, this is my story. Like, I came from nothing and all that. But I'm just like, yeah, sure. I mean, there's that. But like, you're supposed to make it easy for whoever's next to do that. So,
it isn't the point. So you don't have the next person doesn't have to come from nothing. We can start square one. Right. Like let's get to square one and then we can get to square two.
Yeah.
Like we're not asking to get to the finish line. Mm-hmm. Like Yeah, I feel like we just talked to somebody who's like, I think we need people to go through this. People need to experience the struggle, which I don't disagree with.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like we can also remove those unnecessary barriers to access. Like you're talking a lot about access in the work that you do at LISC. It's like, for a lot of people, it's just like, can I even get fair pricing on like my house appraisal,
Right.
like for certain communities. It's stuff like that. Can we remove those barriers? Doesn't mean that there's still not going to be struggle.
Of course.
But it's like there shouldn't be like these types of things standing in our way. I mentioned, one of the many organizations that you sit on the board of is the Philippines Community Center.
Right.
And we've actually had, I think you're the third Filipino American that we've had on this.
Really? Hey, that's what's up.
Which may surprise people in Indianapolis to know that we have a pretty fair and thriving Filipino community here.
Of course.
Was that a surprise to you when you first got here?
Well, I think there's always a saying for us. It's like there's Filipinos everywhere.
I think Mike or maybe Jingo said that.
Like 100%. There's Filipinos everywhere.
Yeah.
And if there isn't, you'll just be surprised at that point. So then that's the only thing that I get from that side of things is like, it's like, hey, like I'm going to get connected, but then I will connect through the center. I will connect through my community and find, those initial touch points as well. But I think what's great is that was a perfect segue for me that now I found my community, my specific like Asian community on that end. Yeah. Now where can I branch off and where can I connect with other folks as well? Because that's who I am personally on that end. Whereas like I know my identity, I know where that is, but I also know that there's a lot of good work and there's a lot of things that we could do together if we connect through everything, through everyone as well.
I love that. That's one of the things I admire the most about you is like, one, this security in your own identity, particularly as just like an Asian man, but then two, this like desire and drive to take that experience and go put it in other places and mix and intermingle and like collaborate with other communities, which I feel like, again, something that we've talked about on the show a lot is like, for whatever reason, whether it be ethnic or racial or some sort of different demographic, we like to get into our silos. Part of that reason is psychological because we just naturally gravitate towards the same, what's similar to us, and part of it is intentional, like redlining and gerrymandering. But other parts are just like, because when those two things kind of come together, we then aren't intentional about like bridging those divides and making those connections. Again, you have this unique perspective as being a global citizen and being able to grow up in an international, with an international background to like see these things in motion. As you got here to Indy and as you kind of like found your own community and like started to ask those questions of how do I go out further? What were the ways? Was there a particular gap that you felt like from community to community or otherwise that you felt like we need to be addressing this? Whether I can do it at LISC or something, like I'm seeing this as a transplant perspective, somebody coming from the outside like, hey, y'all, like there's a thing here that we need to be addressing.
Right. Well, I think, that comes down to like a lot of great work has already happened. As well. So I think what now that we know what that is, it's like, okay, where can we add on to that overall experience as well? Because I think for me, like I always talk about my story being an indie transplant as well, coming from a different state to where like, yes, I didn't know anybody, but then like after a couple of years and such, I'm very intimately plugged in to all of these great works that I'm now a part of. And I think that that goes into the work that's being done, but also realize that, hey, there was intentional work to make sure just within like our Black community, within the Hispanic Latino community as well, of cultivating those intentional spaces for not just young professionals, but for folks from just any lived experience within that community to connect and be able to show that there are other people that want to give back the same way as you do. There are other people that are mission based, that are civically, community oriented as well, that you're not alone in that space. And that's something that I also saw within also our Asian community at the same time.
Yeah.
There is a lot of work that's already being done. So I'm giving flowers to everybody as well. But then it's like, hey, I also want to cultivate now a space for Asian Americans to be welcomed, but also to be introduced into a pathway of service, whether if it's through civic, public, or just any like even volunteer capacity at the same time. And that's through, the work with APAPA as well. To where, you are part of that steering committee at the same time, to where we're able to create a leadership program that allows us to identify and connect like-minded Asian professionals in their 20s and 30s to really be connected to each other, to be able to show that, hey, if you want to serve on a board, if you want to serve at a city committee or a state board or a state committee and such, there are other Asians as well that are interested in that space, but also would want to support you in that pathway to give back. So then you could still, do your thing, whether if you're in corporate or in a different line of work, but still find a way to give back and be connected. Now we have a space for that.
For sure. I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about like it's rare to find one thing that fills every one of your buckets. Like, it like fills your full cup up. Like your job fills not only your passion, but like fills your bank account. Like it takes care of your family. It does all of the things that you want it to do in every level. And a lot of people have to find a number of different things, which is why, like yourself, you're involved in so many different organizations. You're not leaning or reliant on a single thing to give you purpose in all areas of life. We can be involved in these things if they're available, in order to see like you said, like-minded individuals in my own community who I can glean inspiration from. And again, it like requires these things to exist. It's like, yes, we would need these things to be good and high quality. But unlike a charter school like that we're dealing with right now, we need to just where there's too many in existence. We need programs like this, like what we're working on, the Key Leadership Program, to just exist in general, to give people like from our community, for other historically marginalized communities, just the awareness that, oh my God, like this is a thing for me. Because there are so many things that are not for specific communities that are everywhere. And it can literally take just one small thing to create a literally infinite amount of inspiration for people to want to do stuff in the place that they are geographically. I say all that because when I think about our leadership program and when I was listening to you talk about it, I'm getting like hyped up about it because I'm like, this is one of the ways that you retain young folks in your city.
Yeah.
We are in a city that likes to promote itself as the hub of small business. Like we're like the home of the small business. We're going to support small business. And young people, like we want to be entrepreneurs. Actually, they want to be entrepreneurs. I'm an old person. This is a young person. You want to be an entrepreneur. You want to chase and do your own thing. You want to find a way to like marry as much of those different things under that one umbrella that you can, again, and being involved in a bunch of other stuff. And that's why young people flock to places like San Francisco or New York or Chicago, because there are opportunities and programs like Key Leadership exist already.
Yes.
So as we develop something for our young AAPIs here in Indianapolis, I just want to get your perspective just from an overall standpoint. What else can we be doing to retain young talent across the board in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I think pun intended, those are key things to really focus on, because it's like we have to buy into the indie spirit as well, to where like if we're competing with other Midwest cities, larger cities as well, even within our Midwest region or within the East or West Coast respectively, is what are they doing there? And what can we do with our brand? Because we don't have to lose our brand. We know what our brand is, right? At the same time, it's just sometimes what I feel is, even as an indie transplant, is you don't know about all the wonderful things that is being done in the city until you actually pull up and you actually see for yourself.
Right.
and see the work that's being done in that space. So I think being able to continue to provide, whether if it's like support or additional resources on just cultivating the brand of this city across, state, national levels as well, those things will play into it. And some other cities just have higher budgets or just have
Sure.
higher resources dedicated on elevating their brand
Right.
in comparison to Indy. So then those are some things that we could also intentionally look at, because at the end of the day, that will also be able to attract economic investments, social capital with folks coming in. And, we're great in the academic space as well, but then it's just like, hey, but we're also great in the workspace too.
Right.
So then you don't have to go back, or you don't have to go somewhere else, right?
Exactly.
Because your talent is needed here, and your talent is worth being here as well, because because Indy has all to offer in that space.
100%. What is Indy's brand?
For me, I think Indy's brand for me is, you could come into this space, right? Whether if you are a transplant or you're just stopping by, and you're able to see that you could really make meaningful impact at the very start. I think the brand for Indy for me is, you're able to come in and really add on to your story with Indy, and Indy adds your story at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it.
Hey.
I like it because it's like, not only can you add to your own story, but you add, and then you add to the city story. The city adds you to its story,
right?
Like, and it's reciprocal in that way. Like,
right.
we were sharing flowers to each other here at the beginning of the episode. It's reciprocated in that way because, one, I think when I look at the larger cities who are intentionally investing in their communities, which then has an outsized impact on their tourism, and wondering why people are showing up there and pulling up there for whatever reason, it's because the people in those places are being supported in some way. Not always, and definitely not all the ways that are needed, but there is a level of investment that we have not been willing to take the risk to start doing within our community. And I've been thinking about this because we just had Taylor Swift and the NBA All-Star Game, and we're about to have the WNBA All-Star Game. Lots of huge events happening here. The new Fishers Event Center. So we got pro volleyball now. We're doing a lot of huge things, bringing in a lot of eyes. With eyes and seats and ears and mouths, that's dollars to the economy. How much of that is now being reinvested into our small business economy to make sure that they are being supported as well? And when those tourism dollars come in, that can go in, they're seeing some of that as well.
Right.
And we're not just going to the same restaurants, the same, things that are on the lists at the end of the year, the pay to play award show. We're also investing in because those places are going to get their money. You know what I mean? They're going to get booked. They're going to have their reservations. Our small businesses might not end up with that. However, can we avoid some of that because we're willing to take the risk in investing in what we have going on here? Sorry, I just be getting on my high horse, and I got you here, so I'm going to yell at you. Because I know you can say some stuff, but you can't say other things. So I'm going to say it for you. All right. You've been all over the place. And again, I keep coming back to this global international background that you have, but I feel like it's necessary context. I just want to remind folks because that is shaping your perspective on stuff here in the city.
It does.
And so I'm wondering, what's something that you've seen or experienced elsewhere that you would love to see us doing something like here?
Yeah.
It could be a civic program or a social program. It could be anything, but something that you've seen in other places that you're Indy could benefit a lot from something like this.
Well, probably more on a personal side. I would love to see a Jollibee here.
Okay, there you go. All right.
Just within the Filipino community, because it's a great restaurant that is already all over the U.S.
That's true.
So I just we need a Jollibee
Jollibee
here.
plug for sure.
I don't want to go all the way to Chicago or Detroit to get, my food over there. But
For sure.
outside of that,
I mean, that's a pretty solid
no,
one.
those are still valid points.
Super valid.
And I think one of the great things as well is being able to see all the work that's being done, but just also be intentional in all of our spaces too, just within the Asian community as well, is, what does it mean to have a Asian Chamber of Commerce? What does it mean to have dedicated spaces and pathways for our Asian-owned businesses and small businesses to really come together and support that work? I know here in Indy as well, like, we have the Indy Black Chamber, we have the Hispanic Chamber as well at the same time. And it's like, okay, well, what other communities can also benefit from those types of organizations to be cultivated and supported at the same time in partnership and collaboration with them, because it's not about competing for resources as well. In fact, it's all about investing in these resources, because at the end, it cultivates and grows the economy,
right?
Which then benefits everybody at the same time. So just those smaller things, those small but big things, those conversations to where we're able to really start those, but also just have just the environment to make sure that is okay. At the same time, I think that is something that's ongoing. Just I would say within our communities as well. And, we have the night market that's coming up as well. And you could share a little bit about that. But it's just being intentional about these spaces. And making sure that story is uplifted, because, well, for example, in Indy, we have the largest Burmese American population. One of it, if not the largest
outside of the country itself. Or outside of Myanmar.
Outside of Myanmar at the same time. And they're all, predominantly located on the south side as well. But as you could tell, that shows that Indy is diverse.
Exactly.
From the very beginning. Indy has that diverse in communities, but in thought, but also like in businesses as well, to where all those things are there already. Is how do we continue to support that and cultivate it? So not just on the business side, but also on the leadership side of things too. Like, how can we cultivate those relationships in our communities to where they understand that it is good, it is okay to want to serve, whether if it's in a civic or in a community-oriented position at the same time, because you represent your lived experience, you represent your culture that adds on to the American culture here, and as well as the Indie culture, it adds on. It never subtracts. It adds on to where that just makes it better. That makes it more inclusive in that way, and that adds on to how great the city is and will continue to be.
Yeah, I love it, because it's like it speaks to like this lack of infrastructure, specifically for the AAPI community here, because like you said, it's like we have the Indie Black Chamber, we have the Hispanic Chamber, and it's just like even that one disaggregated level of infrastructure is helpful, because when everybody's just grouped into one chamber or labor board, it's like you're eventually, you're going to go to where you want to go. And like those little cliques and pockets are going to form anyways.
Right.
So can we formalize a little bit and find ways to come together so we can really support our own communities? And that will give us the cohesive strength to be supportive to other communities, like when shit happens or when great things happen.
Right.
And then we're popping up at each other's events. We are, again, stimulating each other's economies. And then when we're getting down to into the nitty gritty, we maybe don't have to be so reliant on top level funding, because we are supporting each other in that way. And then we can come together for large scale events where these big corporations with their large checkbooks can write us checks, and we'll do really cool events with them. Okay, so on the flip side of that question, that original question, what's something that you found that we do here really well that's like, oh, other places might benefit if they did what Indy is doing right now?
Oh, I would say community. And
Oh, okay.
you
All
said
right.
you
All right.
said what was the brand of India? I mean, I gave you the long spiel, but then the brand is community for me. I think
Okay.
you're able to to really insert yourself and also buy into, not like in a transactional point of view,
Yeah.
but really be viewed as a person of value very quickly in indie as well. And I think indie does that well because indie has intentional spaces to cultivate, not just the young professionals, but then our working professionals, but then being able for them to decide to make indie their home and stay as well. Like that indie does that very great in that space. Because if it didn't do great in that space, I wouldn't be here.
Sure.
So then I would just say like there is a lot of opportunity in that space for Indie's brand and Indie's story, is because we just do well in having that Hoosier welcome, being able to have that shown by action as well. Like being able to find, I would also add on too, is being able to find, for me personally, champions and advocates from so many communities here, not just within my own community, but I would even say the majority of my mentors and champions are from other communities in indie. And that was both intentional on my end, but that was also organic because indie cultivates such a welcoming space and people realize not just the value that you put in, but also realize that it's important for them because they want you to stay here. They want you to be bought into the story as well. They want you to stay and continue not just their legacy, but an extension of their legacy as well. And it's for you to carry that torch at the same time. And that's why I had this very big, imposter syndrome when I got into the IBJ as well. Like, yes, it was a 20 in their 20s, right? I was the youngest in that cohort to get it at the same time. But I just felt like, wow, that's just insane for me to get an award such as this. But then, my mentors that advocated and recommended me in those spaces, they said, well, you don't have to think about it that way because people already made that decision that you belong here and you are someone that needs to stay here to be valued, to be respected as well. And to, like, in retrospect, all those flowers, you don't have to wait till you're 40 years down the line or like a couple of decades down the line. If you're actively doing the work will be rewarded and the work will be shown and valued as well. So when they said those things, I felt a little bit better because for me, I felt a little bit better because like it's just the imposter syndrome for me because it's just like, well, I've only been here in the city for about 4 years, but then in those 4 years, you're able to make very true and immediate impact and be in those tables and be in those circles as well to where it doesn't matter with the time that you have, but it's more of like what you have done in that time.
100%.
And indie is great in recognizing that particular thing.
So much that I want to say, but all I'm going to say is this: Indie Chamber. I've got a great slogan for you, and I got a great person to represent said slogan. If you're interested, so hit me up. I appreciate you saying all of that. But indie is community. I think that is beautiful sentiment because I think when I'm looking back now and thinking about a year and a half of conversations just in Indianapolis and thinking about everything that people have shared about what the city is and what it means to them, whether it be home, whether it be whatever the definitions are that I'm blanking on, but I know all of them come back to some version of community or being affirmed or supported or something throughout the city in that way, whether it be home, whatever that foundation is. And it all comes back to just like, it is this idea of community, of the people. Like the city itself, this place is its people. And I don't want to get too far into like Thor jargon, but it's like Asgard is not a place, it's the people. Like that's what it is. And like Indy is a little bit like that and carries that sentiment with it when people leave from here and go places, even if you don't realize that's what's happening. So I appreciate you sharing that. I'm serious about it, Chamber. I think you really need to be looking into this. Okay, so that's actually a perfect segue into a recurring segment that we have on the show called Give Them Their Flowers. Shout out to Madeline McKinnon and Frida's Flowers for sponsoring said segment. But we ask our guests to shout out a person or persons who they feel like deserve their flowers at the moment. So Ephraim, anyone that you want to shout out and give their flowers to today?
Right. Well, I mentioned her earlier on, but I would say Malala Kennedy. Shout out to you, Malala, as well. My first boss here, she used to work in the city, and now she's over in Gennesaret as the executive director. She's been a great advocate and champion for me in the beginning, and she was also one of the first ones that told me that you could make that impact. You could use your voice as well and be within and included in indie as well if you chose it, as well. And that was something that I've always took to heart. I'm the type of guy as well that's like, even on LinkedIn, like I would cold message, I would cold email, I would send follow-up emails, and all of that. Because for me, it's like, I don't have that ego when it comes to networking to where like, being able to be accessible as well on my side, but also being able to reach out to people that I want to be introduced to, or people that I want to meet, or circles that I want to be in. That ego for me is not there, because I know that, if you really want to be in touch with folks that are extremely busy or in the areas or levels that you want to be, of course they're going to be busy at the same time. So then just being mindful of your space, but also be a prime advocate and be very intentional and direct, and don't be afraid to follow up, connect, be introduced, or have someone introduce you at the same time. Indie is the perfect place to do that.
Perfect place to do that. Shout out Malala for being an amazing mentor. How many emails before you say, or how many emails you send before you don't get a response and you're like, I'm done sending the email now?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, it depends on how bad you want to be connected to somebody. That's where you really got to look at your ego. No, I'm kidding. But in all honesty, through that process, if it's an organization or someone in particular, that's where you do your homework. At the same time, in networking, is you're able to, yes, if those don't follow ups, what's another way to still be reintroduced to that person? And be intentional about it. It's like, how bad do you want to be connected to an opportunity, or to an introduction, and all of that? That takes the self-awareness, the reflection, but also the hunger as well, and the patience at the same time. But I think if we all have a little bit of patience and a little bit of understanding, it goes a long way.
For sure.
It really does.
For sure.
Yeah.
How long do you wait between emails?
Man, I could go.
How much patience do you have to have?
How much patience? Again, it really depends.
It depends on the person.
No, it really depends. But then I don't mind even following up like a week, or depending on how like important it is, a couple of days in between. But then I could honestly do that. And I mean, it's not an issue for me. I know for some folks, they're just like, nah, I can't do that no more.
Well, some people they send a message, but then they like 3 hours later, they'll be sending another message. And I'm like, hey, I got your first
what about
one,
that?
But I haven't got I don't have the patience. I don't have 3 hours of patience. Okay. Ephraim, I really appreciate you coming through and sitting down and chatting a lot about this, because I feel like there's a lot to pull out about what it means to live in a world and be modeled what it looks like to just give back and serve, and to like not only live into your full self, but then utilize that fullness of yourself to help other people and better your community. And I'm really excited for people to be able to tap into that. As we wrap up here, what do you want to see more of in 2025? Could be anything. But for you, Ephraim, what is it something that you want to see more of for the rest of the year?
There's no, for me, going into this year and next year, there is not a shortage of intentional spaces. I would say whatever that looks like for our communities, we have to keep having them. We have to keep cultivating them, and we have to keep supporting them in that. So I think for me is having those intentional spaces to where we can really connect and foster growth. that is never a shortage. And that should always be prioritized within our communities. And that's something that I want to see moving forward.
I am here for it. How do we start the Asian Chamber of Commerce here in Indianapolis? How do we get that going?
Oh man, I don't know about that one. I mean, that was just a couple things, but I think that draws down to honestly identifying what's already being done.
Sure.
In that space, being able to find champions and allies in that work and really see how is that a priority for everyone else,
Sure.
and being able to also buy in and say, hey, this is beneficial to the city as well. So I think those are initial things we could start on.
Yeah. Ask the right questions first. Maybe just don't form the organization.
Or
I love
not.
it. It's the intentionality behind
Of course,
it. It's the intentionality behind it. That's what makes what you do so special. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you allowing me to give you your flowers, and I'm going to do it again as we get ready to close here, because I really can't impress upon people enough how much this dude does. Literally got off the plane on Monday and walked right into a meeting for our leadership program on Zoom, which is why his camera wasn't on that whole time. So like, he's literally doing the most, and he's doing work here in this city that, again, has an outsized impact, and we are better for having him here. And we will be worse off if he ever decides to leave. So putting it on camera right now. He's a great dude, and he shouldn't leave. And if he does leave, well, bleep this out. Last but not least, again, I really, just appreciate you being here. Appreciate you as a person. For everybody out there watching, listening right now, if you want them to, how do they find you? How do they follow you? How do they support you best as we go forward? Yeah,
well, I mean, like I said with LinkedIn, add me on LinkedIn as well. I'm also on Instagram, the original 30, at the same time. And, those are just some of the big things to be connected with. But, I'm very accessible, very open. As you know, that's how we got connected.
Yep.
And shout out to Milan as well for the intro. But those are just the initial things.
Shout out to Milan. I'm going to be vulnerable and admit that I completely forgot who connected us originally when I brought up the story about how we met. So shout out Milan Ball, because she is an amazing person as well. All open invite to come on the show. My bad. But thank you for putting me in touch with this amazing human being. Ephraim Palmeiro, it's been a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Everybody else, new episodes of this show every Tuesday on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. ConversationPeacePod.com for the archives, for merch, and for the open door. If you're interested in participating with that, check that out. We've got a lot of really incredible things. We've had the market. We've hopefully had a second market by the time this episode comes out, and we are doing a lot. So without further ado, that's been John Overton and Popular Rapture on the mics, Mike Lee and Mike Lee Production on the cameras. Shout out to Pattern and shout out to the Studs for the space. Shout out to Madeline McKinnon and Frida's Flowers for this wonderful set piece and for sponsoring our segment, giving their flowers. Shout out to Ephraim Palmeiro for being an incredible guest. And shout out to me for doing this thing on this microphone on the right side of the table. My name is Patrick Armstrong, and this has been Conversation Piece. See y'all soon.